Built for builders, from beginners to pros, this is where great backyards begin. Welcome to the Ultimate Deck Podcast, your source for backyard building tips, product breakdowns, and pro advice from the front lines of the industry. Here are your hosts, Shane Chapman and Wade Laurent.
Welcome back to the Ultimate Deck Podcast. Shane and Wade is back in studio today. A little bit of a hiatus for the last one.
Man, it really feels like a full studio now. So I skipped the last one. Now I have notes. I have a pen.
Yeah.
I have you have expectations.
The last
this
one
is all
was
changed.
recorded in my bedroom, so it would have been weird if you were there. I mean, not super
It would have
weird.
been weird that you knew I was there. That would have been the weird part.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, speaking of weird, let's talk about Joist flashing. Hey?
Can you ever make sense of when people argue against this stuff?
No. Can I make sense of it? Yeah, I understand why they do it.
Why?
But I think it's always old hands. It's always like the old dudes have been in the industry and they always have the same argument for it, and it's a bad argument. And they refuse to acknowledge it. Oh, I've been building decks for 40 years, and the lumber, I have decks that are 35 years old still look great.
Fine.
Yeah, sure. But the lumber you used 35 years ago isn't the lumber of today. You must know. Just by stating that, you are showing your lack of understanding of what's happened in this industry in the last few decades. So you've disqualified your opinion on this right away, because they always they argue from a position of authority of being like, I've been doing this for 40 years, which means I'm smarter than you. That's what they're trying to say. I'm smarter than you because I've been doing it longer.
Right.
Well, if you were smarter, you would understand why this makes sense today and didn't make sense 40 years ago.
So that's the thing. That's where it falls apart for me. The reason I asked you is can you understand where they come from? You can't. You explain that, and you're like, you can see why they get there.
Yeah.
But you can't understand it, right? And so when I think about somebody who would, let's say they vote differently than me, and it's like they support a different party. Well, I can understand that. I could be like, oh, I can see how you could come to that thought process, and your values are slightly different, and these things are important to you, and blah, blah, blah. I can never understand when somebody says, it's not worth it. I actually I can't do a thought process where I'm like, well, maybe they're right. It's it just doesn't work.
It always comes from a real position of arrogance almost sometimes too.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever I don't think it's worth it. I'm not going to do it. They're always it's stupid. It's snake oil. They're just hardcore into that position.
So I could do that. I could support somebody or believe them or get behind their statement if they were I think it's a lot of hype. I don't think it works as good as people say. Sure.
Yeah.
I could believe that.
Yeah.
But to be it doesn't work. It's never mind. I don't need to talk to you anymore.
Anyway, many of the people that are listening to this may not have any idea what the hell we're talking about. What is Joist flashing?
Now they're going to know.
So we'll go through, now that we got the rant out of the way, we'll go through what it is first. So the
this new format, I almost blew it. I ranted off the start. I'm like, well,
Right.
you know what? We're a third done.
yeah, we're 25% away through our podcast time now, Wade. There's a hard cutoff at 12 minutes and 38 seconds. So Joist flashing is just essentially the practice of using some sort of product to keep the water, rainwater and whatnot, off of the joist. It's that simple, flashing the water away from the tops of your joist. Why? Well, because the most common rot area, one of the most common rot areas on joists, on deck framing in general, is areas where water can't dry out real well. And that one of those places happens to be where boards are sitting on top of the joist, where there's kind of two pieces of materials sandwiched between each other, or on multiple plies of lumber where water can get between them, and then there's just not any airflow to dry things out. So water can leak into very tiny crevices, but airflow doesn't get there, and so it just stays wet all the time.
Right.
If it stays wet, it will grow fungus, and it will start to rot. That's not debatable. You don't get to, well, I've used this.
I've been doing it for 40 years.
So maybe I shouldn't have said not debatable. There's different preservation techniques and different amounts of preservative in things that do help to last longer. Sure. But what we're talking about is generally the lumber that's used for pressure treated decking and how it's pressure treated these days in a deck application, it doesn't last as long as it used to. Not even close.
Yeah. And it's just and the lumber's not the same.
Right.
Right. And so
the lumber's different, and the pressure, 100% of the product is different now.
Right.
Different trees and different preservation.
And the other part that's really, really different that people that have been doing it for 40 years don't know is that deck boards, when he was doing that, or she was doing it 40 years ago, who am I to say that her voice doesn't sound like that?
Yeah.
40 years ago, they weren't using plastic deck boards.
Right.
They were using wood deck boards.
Yeah.
And the wood deck boards would share some of that moisture responsibility.
Yeah.
Now the deck boards have zero water responsibility. They just get rid of all of it.
I've heard, I can't remember who, and it's probably multiple people, but someone used to describe it as like, you're basically putting a Tupperware lid on the top of your deck framing. Like you're just sealing it all in with this plastic unbreathable layer on top. It's like you need to be able to, it can't breathe like it used to, so you need to be able to make sure it doesn't get wet in the first place.
Right.
So flashing of it means to use a product, most commonly a tape. So I would say that's most commonly it's and there's many manufacturers of it, but it's a tape with some sort of adhesive backing on it. And it's often butyl or asphalt based adhesive it's thicker on the backing. And the point of it being thicker is so you tape on top of the joist, and when you put the decking on top and then you fire a fastener through it and tighten it down, that bitumen, that goo squeezes out around the fastener and kind of gums up to seal that puncture from the fastener. That's how that stuff's supposed to work, or how it does work.
Yep. You
can find that kind of stuff from a lot of manufacturers. Like Trex even has the Rain Escape tape now. They sell as a joist flashing too, not just for the Rain Escape system, but you've also got different products like deck flashing and Protector Wrap and
name it,
whatever. Like there's lots of them out there. Everybody's got one.
Yeah.
And I can understand why that makes it look like it's just like people jumping on a train to try to sell more stuff. So the fact that everyone has one, I get it.
But some of the people that are
solving a real problem.
Yeah. Some of the people that are adding this tape or jumping on the bandwagon are like window flashing people, right? So you have like, what's that? Resisto. Resisto jumps on and they start making it. It's like, well, they weren't making deck flashing, but they were making flashing tape for around windows and to seal up basements and stuff.
Right.
And so
and
like,
that's
okay, so it's not a stretch for them to take a 4-inch roll and now make it 2 inches wide. It's like, done.
That's the other reason why it's confusing, why people argue against it all the time. It's like the idea of flashing is not a new thing in building construction methods for anything. You do it with your roof and you do it with your windows and doors, and you flash anywhere that water can potentially get in and not dry out properly and rot things is where you typically use flashing products.
Right.
Anywhere, not just the deck. So it's like, okay, well, it works for this. We have to by code flash our doors and windows with this product. You got to use this blue skin. You got to do this, and you got to use this ice and water on your roof, and you got to you have to do all these things to prevent water from getting into places and rotting things. And it's like, okay, well, the deck is also getting water in there and rotting it. Oh, okay, well then flash that too.
Doesn't work there.
Does it work? Yeah, it works the same way that everything else works.
That's right. Yeah.
So anyway, most commonly tapes we love, and this is not a paid promotion at all, but like we've always been huge fans of G-Tape, and like since we opened the store 10 years ago, and a lot of people do. It's got some extra benefits over so I used and this is not, let me reiterate, this is not a new practice. I was taping stuff, my decks 15 years ago.
So
it's
lots
just
of people were
newer in the last 5 to 10. It's become more common for people to actually do it.
Right.
It was available before.
And you weren't doing it with G-Tape. Like you probably started with roof paper or tar paper. You probably just started with something.
Yeah. If I remember back to the first time I did it, you nailed it. The first time I did it, I actually think I used a resistor product, and it was just a 4-inch wide roll. It was just tar paper.
Yeah.
You stapled it on. That's what I used for the beams. And I ended up going and getting blue skin and taping the tops of the joists. And it was a new thing I was doing, and I never put 2 and 2 together that you'd see the blue between the boards.
Yeah.
So I taped it all and then put on a couple boards and was like, that's no good. And so I went back and got more of the tar paper and put that over top. So that deck got double protected.
Yeah.
But so that's it's been happening for a long time. Lots of guys have been doing it for a long time. G-Tape, though, the problems I used to have with some of the other stuff is there are a multitude of things. One that pissed me off, one of the most, is you had to cut it with a knife, and that tar would just gum up your knife.
Mm-hmm.
The butyl in the back, it was just you're going through blades and going through knives, cutting it, and it's getting on your fingers. And if it's really hot out, it becomes super gooey and gross to work with. Awful. And it gets everywhere.
Yeah.
And if it's too cold, it doesn't stick.
Right.
The adhesive itself either gets runny and gooey, or it freezes up and gets hard.
Right.
And so working with it, unless the temps are ideal, is kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
you also often couldn't reposition it. So you put it down, it's like, oh, you get a bit of a wrinkle, which you did in that stuff a lot. You couldn't easily pull it back up because the adhesive would just like gum up and
it always had some sort of backing on it, right? It had some sort of plastic film that you had to peel off. Yeah. And it's like in the process of peeling that off, it touched itself, like it bonded together on its own self. And you're like, yeah, that does not work.
And then there's times that I would put that stuff on, like I've used that type of tape before, put it on, like say the end of the day before, and you show up the next day to go do it. And it's like, it got hot out and all of the tape has now like expanded and wrinkled and it looks like crap everywhere.
Yeah.
And the problem with that, the expansion contraction of it, is when it gets really cold out and that adhesive contracts, it can, that self-seal squish around the screw head, that can dry out and shrink. And then you've created a possibility for water to get into that screw hole now.
Yeah. And if you even think about just like contraction in general, and so the nail or the fastener that goes through that adhesive is going to be colder than the other part because it's metal. They say that ambient products don't actually feel temperature differently, right? So like if the wood was cold and the screws are cold and it's all the same. Yeah, they all experience it differently, right? But anyways, so I didn't like the butyl base tape because I always thought if the screw was cold, it would push that butyl away from the screw. It would contract away. And so I was like, that doesn't work for me.
So I think that this is not to say you shouldn't use those tapes. If those are the ones you like, using that is better than not doing it, is my point.
Correct.
So I'm just saying why G-tape is better, in my opinion, is because you don't have to worry about that. It uses an acrylic adhesive and it doesn't rely on squishing stuff into voids to seal them. It relies on like a negative charge in the adhesive that essentially magnetically attracts itself to the steel fastener. And so it operates a little bit differently, but it still self-seals. But G-tape alone is thinner. So if you're doing if you're lapping in a corner or something like that, you don't have to worry about there being like too much of a difference that a deck board's going to rock on it or your miter's not going to line up nice or something.
An eighth of an inch happens.
Yeah. It's super thin, G-tape. And the other stuff is like twice as thick.
Right.
Which is fine if it's just one layer everywhere, but if you start lapping it. It's hand tearable, so no knife required at all. You just rip it like you would duct tape, which makes it quite super simple to work with. It sticks at any frickin' temperature, like minus 30 Celsius which almost the same as Fahrenheit. But and it also sticks when it's 40 or 110. It still sticks. It's a little bit tackier, but it never loses its ability to stick. It's also repositionable. So if you put it down, it's not quite right. You can lift it up and put it down again. What else? Self-seals. You can get a paperless back version of it. So if you get the 3040 model number, it has paper backing on it and available in 2, 4, 6, 9, 12-inch rolls and big 51-inch or 54-inch. Yeah. And then they've got the 3035, which is paperless in the 2-inch and 4-inch. So I'm telling you, like
it's so fast.
It used to be more money for the paperless, and I think they're about the same now. So now it's a no-brainer.
It's still a little bit more. It's like $2 a roll more, but I'm just like, when I sell that to people, I'm like, don't.
It's even if it's $2, it's worth it. If it's 10% more, it's worth it.
Yeah.
To not have that paper flap around, not that the paper's a big deal. It's just a bloody mess when you're doing a big deck with it.
What I say is, okay, now imagine the job's all done, and then you're gonna walk around tonight, and you're gonna pick up all this paper from all over the yard because it's blowing around, and some of it's under the deck, and some's in the bushes.
Well, even when you're putting it down, it's nice to just be able to stick the tape on one end, pull the roll, roll the roll out, and just put it down, rather than rolling the roll out, then pulling the paper back. Putting it down, and then roll the roll, and then pull the paper back, and then anyway, get the paperless. Bigger stuff you can. But anyways, so it's really good stuff, and it sticks, and it doesn't shrink and expand and contract. It doesn't like lift off afterwards. Like it just works really, really well. I think it's awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Lately, there's been kind of a new category of products, primarily driven by FastenMaster Deck Coating. So there's all sorts of rubberized flashing products you can use out there, but this one's made probably the loudest impact recently. And it's a roll-on version of this. So the function is the same. The function is you put it on top of your joist, it self-seals fasteners, it keeps water off the joist, prevents water from getting where it needs to go. But instead of taping, now you're just dipping a roller in a bucket and rolling it on. I'm not saying better or worse. It's honestly sounds like it's split down the middle. Some contractors much prefer this. Some contractors much prefer the tape. To each your own. I actually think if I was still building decks, I would probably use a combination of, because I really like the idea of using that FastenMaster Deck Coating on the stair stringers, where you can paint it on into like the corners and like, you roll it on there. When it's like, I feel like that's a really good application, but I still like taping other certain things. And if I was doing a 3-ply beam, I feel like I would feel better using like a 6-inch wide roll of tape than hoping that the roll-on coating is going to properly fill the void between the gaps.
Yeah, I believe that I would probably use the tape all the time because I like the other stuff looks messy to me.
Yeah.
Whether it is or not.
I've heard it's not too bad. Like that's what I
It
thought
would
too.
be
It's like
thick
a bucket
enough,
of tar.
right?
But,
Yeah, it's like it's thick enough, but like I don't know.
But it's supposed to be faster, and it is a little bit cheaper per. I think you get something like 400 linear feet out of a bucket of it if you were doing like a joist.
Yeah.
And your tape rolls are 65 linear feet, and that's what, like 25-ish bucks. How do I do this math here? 65
by lineal foot.
What's 400 divided by 65?
On it.
If we can get that figured out. Anyway, it's supposed to, I believe it works out to a little bit less money than using the tapes.
615.
615. So you'd have to buy 7. Yeah, so for sure it is. You'd have to buy like $150, $175 worth of tape to do the same that like a $120 bucket of the roll-on coating does. So I guess it is a little bit less money as well. So those are a couple ways to accomplish keeping water off the deck frame. Now, why do this? Well, in 2003, I think it was is when they banned the arsenic that used to be in the old CCA treated lumber, which was much more effective and lasted a lot longer. And I believe that kind of like 2003, I think it was in Canada, maybe 2004 in the US, that was no longer allowed to be used in residential applications. Now it's only commercial, structural, like in the like water, like you can only use it in certain applications, which is 0 of the time is at your backyard on most decks.
Yeah, it's like foundation walls and in-ground contact, right? It's like if you're building something, a retaining wall or a pony wall or something in the ground, then you're allowed this arsenic.
Right.
That doesn't seem to make any sense, does it?
Well, when we were at the treatment plant not too long ago, like a few months ago, they were talking about how, like, you know what, it was never as bad as they say it was and whatever. Anyways, they thought it was a lot more political and government overstep or red tape than
scary
it was
words,
real.
right?
But regardless, the lumber's not treated like that anymore. And we're also harvesting the trees at a lot faster rate, and they're just not as old and dense, and the rings aren't as tight, and the less dense lumber is more porous, which absorbs more water, which rots faster. And so you combine those two things, it's like, well, the preservative is not as good as it used to be, and the tree is not as resistant to rot as it used to be. And all of a sudden you get reports of people that have decks that are 5 to 7 years old that have rotting spots already in these high moisture areas.
Is that crazy?
So like, yeah, I've also torn decks out that were 30, 40 years old and they still looked great.
Yep.
But unfortunately, that's not
how
what a lot of decks are built out of these days. You can't find 30 and 40-year-old lumber.
Yeah.
So it's a really great practice. You don't have to do it. It's not required anywhere to my knowledge. It is an optional practice. I think it's a really great thing to do. It is, call it about 50 cents a square foot on the average project to do. US, call it 75 cents Canadian, in that range. It's not much. Like on a 200 square foot deck, you need $100. You need 1 bucket of the roll-on coating, and you need a few. Like it's nothing.
Yeah.
That composite deck you're doing that's
Thousands.
200 square feet is like you've got $6,000-$8,000 of material there. If you're paying somebody to do it, like it's a $15,000 deck. What is another couple $100 to make sure the framing lasts as long as the freaking lumber or decking that's going on top?
And it always sounds funny to be like, you're a sales guy being like, well, what's another $200? And you could do that right all the way to the end to a $40,000 deck. You're like, what's another 200? But there's a lot of like cost / value on this for me. And I really think that this $200 extends the life of your deck like exponentially.
Yeah.
It for sure does twice the lifetime now.
Right. And that's like, I'm not on the sales floor anymore, but even when I was never pushing this hard. I would let people know about it, and it's up to you whether you want to do it or not. I'm not saying you have to.
Yeah.
On a new deck, totally your call. Would I do it? Absolutely I would. But it's your project. However, on a resurface, so if somebody's pulling off old decking, keeping the framing, and that framing already has 10, 15 years of life out of it, and they're pulling up all these screws and nail holes that have punctured the tops of the joists, and now there's nothing in that hole anymore filling it up, water and crap's going to get in there, you'd be crazy not to. So again, not required by anybody, but in those applications, I tell people this is, in my opinion, it's a damn near requirement to do it if you're resurfacing. Seal up those old holes. The new stuff will go on and be self-sealed when the screw goes through the new stuff. You want, like, your deck framing may look good today because it's 15 years old, and it may have lasted another 10 years all by itself. But as soon as you've popped that off and introduced 1,000 little holes into that treated lumber, you've reduced its life. So seal those back up so that you can get another 15 out of it.
Yep.
To your point, like we're in a pretty dry climate here. The case of rotting here is much less. It exists. I've seen it 1,000 times. It exists, but it's not like it's the Pacific Northwest where you're 240 rain days a year. Like that's bad news bears.
Yeah.
But even here, I still think it's a great practice. The problem is people are buying composite decking with the vision and the promise of it being a maintenance-free deck and it lasting their lifetime. They have to do this one time. And if they're going to stay in their house 30 years, they're like, I'm going to build this deck and it's going to be a 30-year deck. And I'm buying the deck board because it has a 30-year warranty or a 50-year warranty. And it's like, that's all great. But if the framing underneath is done for in 12 years, you've wasted all the extra money you put up front to get the vision of the 50-year deck is gone now because the entire supporting structure, it's all got to come apart.
Yeah.
To save 50 cents a square foot.
Yep.
Which turns that 12-year lumber probably into 25-year lumber. Like, makes a lot of sense to me. I'm just saying.
That's why I can't get behind the other side of the argument. I just can't do it.
And I'm not going to try to convince the guy who's dead set against. Don't do it. I don't care.
Do it.
Learn the hard way. You're also arguing with me from New Hampshire. I'm not that I can't, but I'm not selling you any tape. That's not my point. I'm trying to help educate and tell you a strong belief I have that this is a good practice.
It's a good practice.
Yeah. Anyway, but we do sell it. So like here we are hawking the stuff.
You could buy the tape.
If you want to go to tuds.ca, we have it there. We ship all across Canada and the United States. We sell the FastenMaster Deck Coat and the G-Tape, and we actually still sell the Resisto, what do they call it? Joist, Resisto? No, sorry, not Resisto, Pilex.
You have Pilex now.
The
We
Pilex
used to have
strips.
Yep.
So if you're looking for a super budget, like you don't want to pay even the 50 cents a square foot, you want more like 15 cents a square foot or 20 cents, whatever it is. Just go on our site and search for Pilex strips. I can't remember the exact name of it right now for some reason.
Yeah.
We don't sell a lot of it because G-Tape's that good and so is Deck Coat. But if you want to look for a super budget option, here's a scenario. If you decide you're not going to tape all the joists in the deck, but you do want to tape your beam because multi-plies is like a definite issue, but you don't want to buy a 65-foot roll of G-Tape because it's 4-inch or 6-inch because it's $50, whatever dollars. Yeah. Then go buy the Pilex strip because it's half the price.
Right.
I think it's a 75-foot roll. It's longer, but at least you're not. If you only need 20 feet, you only need 20 feet. You might as well take the cheaper stuff. Yeah. Anyway, we've got all those options on our website, and it's free shipping in Canada over $199. And what else did I say? Anyway, okay, that's it. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense. If you guys have questions about the practice, hit us up. We can certainly answer them. And if you hate the idea of doing it, then don't do it.
Comment on the post. We love talking, guys. Thank you.
All right, take it easy, everybody. See you on the next one.